Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dirty Martini. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're having an amazing day. I'm recording this with my last few battery percent and wish me luck because those are supposed to last until tomorrow at least because we haven't had power for 3 days now because of the snow. And I kid you not, the snow is up to my knees. And I know that I'm not the tallest person to ever exist, but you can still imagine that this is a significant amount of snow. And I take full responsibility for this situation. Because when I came here, it was so warm. And I kept on saying, I didn't come all the way here for Christmas for it to be actual summer. And my thought process was if I brought my warmest jacket, the weather needs to be cold. There must be snow. And we did indeed have our first white Christmas in years, so Bulgaria, you're welcome. But little did I know that this would lead to an actual emergency snowstorm situation with no water, no electricity, no nothing. So, my bad, guys. I know maybe I should be more specific with my manifestations and my prayers. I don't know for the future. But did I get what I wanted? Yes. Is it at a certain level becoming excessive? Yes. Is it still pretty? Yes. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. Because in my village, there were so many trees broken and fallen on the road. I was just shocked. I'm extremely surprised that none of them actually hurt anybody as far as I know. But this is not the point of this episode. In this last episode of 2024, the last episode for 2024, I am tuning in with a personal mission, if you will. Today, I want to set the tone for 2025 and for, however long Dirty Martini exists. I want this episode to be a sort of a PSA for you and a reminder for me. And the idea of dedicating an entire episode to this is so that I make it meaningful in my current eyes and consequently in the future just something to note. This episode has been in the brewing for quite some time now, and I have tried to record it multiple times, but it never felt like I'm doing my experience and my thoughts justice. And trust me, this is something I need to do in a way which validates me so that it sort of sets me free from my own expectations. The question which prompted this episode can be phrased like, why do I feel the need to always justify everything I say and don't say? I know that this is coming perhaps out of the blue for you because it is so random unless you hyper analyze every single word I speak here, which I hope you don't do. But again, it is something that has been keeping me occupied for quite some time. Well, since I started this podcast, and it is something that crosses my mind every single week, to be honest, no exception. And you can see it in the episodes. Go to every single episode ever, especially the ones that are dedicated to a single topic. And you will hear me introduce and justify the topic for, at least 10 minutes. And I always go on this long tangent of explaining how I arrived at the idea for the topic and why I have decided to bring it up. Now, this may seem rather innocent, and on the surface, it is innocent, but on a deeper level, it is grounded in a terrible tendency that is very much present even after I turn off the microphone. That is a tendency that is to be noted long before I created Dirty Martini. And what I'm talking about exactly is the tendency I have to always put this heavy weight on myself to justify everything and anything I say or don't say, everything and anything I do and don't do. I don't know what it is grounded in exactly. I don't know the psychological background it may have, but over the years, I have experienced the psychological consequences of this tendency. And basically, what I'm trying to get at is that even though I don't know the basis on which this tendency and these questions are built, I just know that it is an extremely exhausting question to pose because it lets some doubts lure in every now and then, and it makes you question your entire thought process and what you bring to the table. It is simply just a draining question when you actually think about it. If not anything else, it can be creatively draining because it labels things as worthwhile and not worthwhile to bring to the forefront. And because of these labels, your creativity is somewhat constrained and questioned. And because you want to dedicate your time, energy, and life to meaningful things, this question ends up nourishing this self-doubt system, which makes you question if you're wasting your time and potential. Because it makes you want to make everything special in order to perceive it as meaningful. And this can be very bamboozling. And worst of all, it can be very, very disappointing if you struggle to accomplish this specialness in your own eyes. If you struggle to see things as special, if you fail to perceive your life and your existence and your voice as meaningful. And this is all you ever want, for them, for you to have a meaning. So then you come to perceive them as, and yourself, not just them, you come to perceive yourself as a burden, as a curse, and you just come to feel as a complete waste. And feeling this, and actually finally admitting it here, I know pains me like some sort of a terrible hypocrite. Because I come on here to preach that life doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful, but then I myself struggle with practicing this. Because I'm such a terrible perfectionist that it is not even funny anymore. Because it deprives me of the joy of ordinary things. But this dichotomy between my preaching and my practices is becoming too much to handle. And if not anything else, it really, really annoys me. And here on this podcast, I've noticed that in particular, this perfectionism manifests in me always going on a tangent to explain why I have chosen the topic I have chosen and why it is even worth mentioning. And then I come to think to myself, if it is part of life, of my thought process, it is by definition meaningful. So I'm stuck between these two mentalities that I have. Ultimately, I know that you shouldn't have to fight to justify its existence for it to have the right to exist. But at the same time, I feel like I just have to do it. I have to justify my existence. I really, really dislike that I have this internalized need inside of me to always come out here and justify why what I'm about to talk about is worth talking about. So maybe by saying the following, I will finally get it off my chest and will lift the pressure that sometimes arises with producing content, or at least wanting to produce content that is meaningful to me, to you, and just content that I'm proud of. And it is really interesting why I feel that this would be the only type of content that would make me proud, that, the justified content. But we don't have the time, or at least I don't have the intention and desire to go deep into my psychology behind self-perception, self-pride, and all the whatnots that go into it right now, because first of all, I have a splitting headache. And second of all, if we did go there, we'd be here until at least January of 2027. So this is an issue that I have been noticing exacerbate recently with all the episodes that are just a normal talk, that are the so-called yapping sessions. Because if you've noticed, my content changes over time, and I'm still trying to find my voice, and I want my voice to be mine. And sometimes that is not dedicated to something so crushing or life-changing. And as much as I enjoy making these episodes, these quote-unquote yapping sessions, because they're so much fun to record, like I genuinely enjoy creating them so much, I just think every now and then that they are not worthwhile because they're not necessarily contributing to anything larger. Because whenever I mention the podcast to someone new, they always ask me, what is your podcast about? Which is a totally normal question. And whenever I say, just my life, my podcast is about me and my own experiences and me navigating my 20s and me navigating my existence. So there has not been a single time I haven't been asked as a following question, what makes your life so interesting that you want to share it online? And this is an extremely valid question. It is the question of what do I bring to the table? And of course, if you are going to carve a space out for yourself online, you need to make some clarification, even if it's not to others, but at least to you, why it is that you want to carve out this space. So why should you listen to this episode? Why should you tune in every week? What makes my life so different that it is shareable? And the thing is, I don't have the answers to these questions. I'm just creating this podcast for the sake of creating this podcast. It just brings me pleasure. It is something I enjoy. And if it is something you also enjoy and want to listen to, amazing. But if it's not, amazing. I'm creating this space simply because I want to and quite honestly need to. There are no ulterior motives. There's no why. As for what am I contributing to the world and the podcasting environment, the answer is nothing. I'm not here trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm here simply because this is just something I want to do. Nothing in my life is more special or extraordinary to classify it as shareable. It's just something that I do. Podcasting, it just brings me joy. And that should be enough of a justification. But then I also ask myself, does my existence have to be bigger than life to be justified? And to this, I would say I can at least guess the answer. And I would assume it's no. And I know this, and I very much recognize the toxic self-destruction road, this mentality of having to be bigger than life to be meaningful. So I very much know how this mentality can be toxic and lead to self-destruction. And I just want to prevent myself from going there before I've reached a point beyond return. Because some episodes here would just be a stupid little yapping session, and others will be an extremely focused deep dive into a particular topic. And I want to be able to perceive both as okay, because both of these are me. I am not just my surface, but I'm not also only my core. I am both, and I'm everything in between and beyond, and I don't want my perception of one to hinder the existence of the other, because it is all me. So ultimately, my goal, here I go again with stating the justification, but ultimately my goal now, having noticed and noted this, is to prevent this potential issue from becoming a permanent problem. So I want to prevent it in its early stages, even though we're quite literally more than 40 episodes deep. And I have been planning again to do such an episode for months, but I kept on pushing it back because I just didn't feel ready. And then I realized that I will perhaps never be ready if I keep leaving it for later, so it is now. Not now or never. There's no or in this situation. I just need to do this now. Cards all on the table. Honesty and transparency here. So the idea is that I can stop it before it takes away the pleasure that podcasting is bringing me. Basically, to restate the problem, I don't know why it happens, but it is the idea that I feel the need to explain everything I do or don't do, everything I talk and don't talk about, on here in particular, and why. And if you go back to any of my episodes, you will be able to see this topic justification. Again, stating the already said. More often than not, I go into these intricate explanations of why I have chosen the topic I have chosen, why I feel like it is a worthwhile endeavor, and why I think it should be given a spotlight. Now, the thing is, in front of who am I trying to justify it? You or me? And if I'm here recording this, justifying yet again why I need to make an episode about why I want to stop justifying everything, I'm pretty sure we all know the answer to this question. So why do I always feel the need to justify everything I say here? I'm not saying that providing a reason and context to why you're bringing something up is unnecessary or unwanted. I'm just trying to steer clear from the idea that a topic is worth mentioning only when it is justified, and that it is meaningful when it is justified. Be it scientifically, be it psychologically, emotionally justified, and so on and so forth. I feel like this justification, while it provides some background and clarity, also poses some bigger risks about what we see as content worthy and as shareable. And true, podcast equipment should be more expensive. And true, not everyone should blast their opinions and beliefs for the world to see and hear. But if this is the path I have chosen, then I need to walk it. Because nobody is forcing me to be here, and I don't want to be the one to force myself. Now, I'm not saying that I am forcing myself. I actually love nothing more than creating this podcast. It is something I'm so extremely grateful I started, but because I know myself so well and I know the way I operate in my self-deprecations, I want to just trim the thorns before they make me bleed. So don't perceive this episode as me saying that I feel burdened and heavy. I don't. I have, well, in certain situations I have, and because I know how I have felt in those situations, I want to prevent them from happening. I want to create the space because it is fun and enjoyable, not because I am punishing myself to justify my existence. Because what a terrible trial that would be, to have to explain over and over again why you're feeling your feelings and thinking your thoughts and why they're worthy of recognition and validation. They're valid simply because they are. They're things you experience, so they're valid. Point blank, period. And because I want this space to be me through and through, that means that I don't, or at least I shouldn't have to justify every single little thing about it, every single thing I say or don't say. Because I don't need to justify my existence to make it worthwhile. It matters, I matter, simply because I am, not because I need to prove that I have to matter. Does that make sense? This is extremely confusing to talk about, especially if I don't know where it stems from. And this battle of meanings, if you want to call it, can be extremely exhausting and can ultimately create pressure about the type of content I create out here, because I want to create content that is relevant to me, that is timely in my life experiences. And if sometimes that content means having deep, heavy conversations and other times just having a superficial chit chat, then so be it. I cannot constantly be at 1,000% giving TED Talks left and right. And I shouldn't have to be. Sometimes I will be talking about my mental struggles, and sometimes I will be talking about the mice in my place. And both of those should be a worthwhile topic, if not for you, for me, because both are aspects of my lived reality. And I want this place to be an audio manifestation of me through and through, with the existential and the mundane, with the interesting and boring, with the soul crushing and the silly goofy, with the weather topics and the emotionally heavy conversations. I want this place to be a reflection of me. And I and my existence are not monochrome. I am a multi-layered being with a multi-layered existence, and putting myself in a box and a label which defines the genre of my content would just be extremely constraining and would straight up feel suffocating. And what is more, it would also feel deceptive. Because I love, for instance, having the existential 2 a.m. conversations. But let's be real. You cannot have only deep conversations in your actual real life 24/7. It is all about the balance, the gray, if you will, as I mentioned in the last episode. So, the same way I want to allow myself in my offline existence to be multi-layered, to be colorful, to be interesting, to be boring, to be meaningful, to be meaningless, to be fun, enjoyable, smart, and stupid all at the same time, I also want this place to be like this. And I don't want to be the one to put myself into creative chains of what content I should produce. I have done this before in my writing. Back in 2022, I forced myself to write at least one poem every month. And while this was my most productive year when it comes to poetry quantity, I feel like in the end it came at the cost of its quality. Now, I'm not saying that what I wrote was bad, but over time, I didn't do it with the motivation and desire. I did it because I had to, because I self-inflicted this deadline and this duty. And yeah, it just felt draining. It took away the pleasure because everything just started sounding too similar. And yeah, it just wasn't authentic. The hyperfixation of being productive in my creative process took away the joy and rawness of creativity. And let me tell you, the result ultimately was that I stopped writing for over a year. In fact, I have barely written anything this year, for instance, and because I just didn't feel like writing. And I have promised myself to never force myself in that way again, because it didn't feel natural, it didn't feel real and authentic anymore. It just wasn't me. And how am I supposed to express myself truthfully if I don't feel like expressing myself at all? I want to learn to give myself grace, to make mistakes, to not judge myself for not always showing up where I need to show up, and to give myself grace to be human and not deprive myself of the fluctuation of humanness within me. I know that this is all too abstract. Trust me, I know it is confusing and I know it is perhaps nonsensical. But above else, this episode is created by me, for me. It is me symbolically giving myself the grace to exist. Me allowing myself a human existence, whatever that entails. Basically, this episode is me recognizing the realness and validity of my thoughts and feelings and fears. Because I cannot expect anyone else's validation to substitute my own invalidation. So if this whole thing sounds stupid, unattainable, or a waste of words to you, that is fine. My target audience with this is me. And while I'm still trying to repair my relationship with writing, I don't ever want to ruin my relationship to podcasting ever in the first place. Because this is such a me type of creative endeavor. And I love it so much. And I want to protect it with my entire being and my entire soul. And I never want anything or anyone, me included, to shadow the process. And I want to do it because I am enjoying it, not because I have a self-inflicted duty to do it. Once things turn into a have to and not a get to or want to, that should be your signal that your relationship to that particular thing has changed. And I want this episode to not only stop the justifying of every single breath I take, but I also want to free myself from these expectations and to let myself know that it is okay to do podcasting for as long as I want to, however I want to. And because I feel like there is a potential threat to this, be it internalized or from an outer factor, I want to solve it at its root as soon as possible, the best way I can. This entire space is created and curated solely by me. Dirty Martini, come on, I even quite narcissistically named it after myself. It is a space created by me, for me. I am the sole producer, creator, brain, editor, marketeer, manager of all of this. This place is me. Dirty Martini is me, and I am Dirty Martini. And now, let me ask myself something. Why am I justifying my existence here in front of you if that place is created to serve me? Who am I trying to impress and why? Now, I know that this will sound quite paradoxical, but I'm not doing anything to impress anyone but myself. Ultimately, the answer is me, because I am my biggest critic ever, and I want my biggest critic to be my biggest supporter. Because, for instance, if any of you critiqued me for my content, but I was proud of it, I would still be proud of it. I had someone quite recently call my podcast is not interesting and very monotone and non engaging and not attention grabbing. But because I am proud of my podcast, I didn't let their words get to me. But on the other side of the spectrum, if any of you complimented me on my content, but I felt like it wasn't good enough, no amount of praise would change my mind. So everything I am doing in this life is to impress myself. Because there is nobody on this planet who doubts me the way I doubt myself. And there is nobody on this planet who supports me the way I support myself. And it is a rather interesting relationship I have with myself, because I want to prove myself wrong all the time, and at the same time I want to prove myself right, that I can do it. It is very confusing at times. Doubting yourself, but at the same time somehow knowing that you can do it, it is confusing, because it is like you have a little devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, but both of them are you, and both of them are saying things with substance. And it's like you want to prove one wrong and one right, but which one? And I know I can do it. No matter how much I try to bring myself down in any way possible, I still know I can persist. And I know this sounds extremely cocky, but it is that over the last years I have survived and thrived in situations which were curated either by me or by someone else and were outside of my control. So situations which were curated to bring me down. And I'm still here, despite my bets against myself. So I have been proving again and again to myself that I can do it. And over time, I have come to earn my own respect. And I just want to prove to myself that I'm stronger than I think, that I'm better than I think. And I'm on the path of achieving it, but it is difficult when you still have these self-doubts that are refusing to leave. So you either learn to navigate them or you learn to deafen them with your self-love and self-respect. Because the way I have been navigating my life, my thoughts, my emotions, and being able to not perceive them as a punishment, but as a growing opportunity, as a learning moment, and as just another thing I get to experience, well, this just like the way I've been navigating all of this has given me an incredible confidence boost that I pray nobody, me included, is able to take away from me. Sure, there's no denying it. Sometimes I will be taking a step or I will be running backwards. And that is okay, as long as I eventually find my way back on the right track. Or even if not on the originally perceived as right track, as long as I carve out a track that I follow, that is okay. Because as cocky as this sounds, I am that girl. True, after I stop the microphone, will I be crying and will I sit in front of the mirror judging every single thing about myself? Yes, I will. Do I still love myself beyond borders? I do. Do I make myself unnecessarily struggle? Do I sometimes self-loathe in ways which are so extremely self-destructing? Yes. But I feel like that is just being a human. And that is just the path to self-acceptance. That is just being. Because no matter how much I fall, no matter how much it hurts, I managed to always survive, or at least I have managed to always survive. I don't know what the future holds for me. I hope the future is kind, and I hope I am kind myself and kind enough towards myself to be kind towards myself in unkind situations. So, I don't know, because I am my one and only competition in this life, because no other person on this planet has lived my circumstances the way I haven't lived yours or someone else's. So I want to prove to myself over and over again that all the hate I give myself is unnecessary and unjustified. It will sound perhaps rather odd, but sometimes I act out of hatred towards myself. And it is all because I want what I want. I want what is best for me. I am trying to impress myself because I want to be proud of myself and of what I create. And this again circles back to this. What do I see as self-pride worthy? But this self-pride intricacy to the side for a second. If I am justifying it out loud, even though internally I already know why I want to do the things I want to do, what does this mean? After all, this is my own space that I am myself creating from start to finish, and I have nobody to answer to but myself. So why do I feel the responsibility, the duty even, to justify why everything I talk about is worth talking about? I think I should just try to stop doing this, because it is putting unnecessary pressure on myself to come up with something that I or a version of myself would deem worthwhile. And not everything has to be perfect and super meaningful and life-changing to be shareable. So get this in your head, Martina. Your content shouldn't be, and most definitely, let's be real, it is not world-changing. So don't pressure yourself to reinvent the wheel. It has already been invented. So I want to try and stop justifying every single breath I take and every single word I speak in front of myself first, and then later in front of the others. Because even though here I do it just for myself, the entire justification perhaps is because on a deeper level, I feel the need to prove to myself that there is a reason why I deserve to have this space, even though nobody is threatening to take it away from me. But in my day-to-day life, I always feel this internal pressure to over-explain so that I feel an even ounce of being understood and justified. And here I'm not referring to only justifying things in front of myself. I'm very much talking about over-explaining myself to others and trying to get them to see why I'm not a waste of oxygen. It's like I need to convince the other person that what I'm doing or saying is worthwhile. I don't know, I just find it such an interesting and complicated tendency I have. And one that can potentially be very, very, very harmful, which is why, knowing it now, I will try my best to not let it infiltrate the space of pure myselfness. Because again, I want the space to be pure. And if that means sometimes this sort of things manifest, so be it. But I don't want my internal battles for self-acceptance and attaining self-pride to define it. I want them to be a part of the journey, but I don't want Dirty Martini to be a battlefield where I try to prove to myself why I am a worthy voice. And I will try to start doing this from this episode onwards. I know it will take me quite some time to unlearn my ways, but hey, I have identified a problem and the potentially right solution, so let's just see how it goes. Sometimes, to be honest, I do feel a bit of pressure that everything I talk about in a single episode has to be coherent and interrelated. And then I just think that that's just all boring and too unnatural because that's just not how you have conversations. That's what lectures are. And this isn't a lecture. If you're using Dirty Martini as your university or religion, please don't. I have no clue what I'm talking about. So if you take anything I say and try to apply it to your life, that's on you. But anyways, so like sticking to the same topic is all fun and games until you realize that that's not how actual human conversations are. Or at least that's not how I have conversations in my life. My friends and I always go back and forth on topics, with sometimes doing a 180 to turn to something totally unrelated, but something we feel is worth sharing and something we just simply want to talk about. And because this space is and should be my comfort corner of the internet, I want it to flow as naturally as possible. Even if sometimes I switch topics absolutely unexpectedly and unrelatedly. In other words, it is what it is. Sometimes I will hyperfixate on a topic for weeks on end, and others I will just say it in passing. And I want to perceive both as okay. And I want to let myself simply exist within this space. I don't want to come here every week and fight with myself for my right of survival. Fight for myself, in front of myself, with myself. I want to just let myself be within this space I created for myself. I know this sounds so extremely messy and confusing, and trust me, I know my explanations are not making it easier to comprehend. And before anyone tries to diagnose me with BPD, let's leave this to the professionals. I have had people try to diagnose me with a lot of mental disorders and have tried to put me on a lot of spectrums recently. So can you please not, because this is extremely, weird, yes, but like also, Anyways, so I think this is simply the result of being forced by certain circumstances to spend so much time with myself, by myself, that in certain aspects I have come to perceive myself as an individual within me that is me, but that is still someone I have to prove myself to. It is all me. All the emotions, all the feelings, all the ups, all the downs, all the layers, all the experiences. It is all me. I am a continuation of myself and a manifestation of myself. And it is like I'm trying to prove myself to a version of myself. And the thing is, I cannot comprehend if I'm trying to prove myself to my past, my present, or my future self. Because, again, I am a continuation of myself. But I very much recognize how I am currently different to myself 2 years ago, and I would imagine I would also be a different version of me in 2 years from now. So, which one am I trying to impress? Because all of them have different criteria when it comes to perceiving me as impressive. But ultimately, it is all me at all times because I will always and forever be past me. She will always and forever be a part of me. And this is true for present me as well, because I will never be anyone else but my present self, ultimately, even if that present self is in the future. Okay, this sounded so extremely confusing. Wait, let's break it down. Let me clarify. Basically, I am carrying past me, but I will always be present me. Whoever I will be in 3 years will be my present version 3 years from now. Myself from 5 years ago was my present self from 2019. So it is all present me's, just at different times, if that makes sense. So which one am I exactly working for? Or perhaps which one am I working against? I feel like yet again I'm here saying so many words yet saying nothing at all. In my attempts to explain myself, I just create these labyrinths of emotions that I can navigate myself, but struggle sometimes to translate and verbalize and make attainable to someone who is not me. When it comes to you and you listening to this, I won't lie, this is also an aspect of this relationship I am considering, of course, because I care about you and I want to deliver something that is not wasting your time. And I'd like to think that you're tuning in simply because you want to hear what I have to say about whatever. I shouldn't have to convince anyone why I am worth listening to. If we vibe, we vibe. I just want it to be stressless for me as an experience, and I'm finally ready to admit that having to come up with shareable content is making me a bit stressed. And I don't want this for myself, and I don't want this for this podcast either. Because if I see the content creation as done in a particular way and not as something creative, I risk potentially growing less and less fond of it. And I don't want this. I just don't want it. So from now on, I will try to just start talking instead of explaining why I will talk about what I'm about to talk about. And of course, I will continue to go on deep into the smallest and the most shallow things. That's just who I am. But I don't want to create this expectation for always doing this because sometimes I simply don't have anything to say and I don't have multiple sides to look at it from. Sometimes things just happen and I don't want to have to overthink everything I say here. That's not me saying that I do, by the way, but I know how I operate in my life outside of this podcast. I know myself beyond Dirty Martini. And because I want to avoid losing my passion or weakening my passion, I'm just making this quote unquote statement, confession, or whatever, perhaps even a promise to myself and to you, of course, that I will not put unnecessary pressure on myself to deliver and over deliver every single time. Because I'm only a human and I'm navigating life for the first time ever. So, with that being said, thank you so much for listening to this. It was so extremely confusing. I know, but it made sense to me somehow. And I'm the one who needed to hear it. So, thank you for listening, or sorry for listening, whatever applies. I just wanted to say that I am thankful and extremely humbled and privileged that I was a part of your 2024 and that you were a part of mine. This year has been extremely emotional and experience packed, and I'm glad I had you to vent to. And I never and will never take this for granted. 2024 was definitely a year in which I faced a lot of my fears and proved to myself that in the middle of being scared, I can still find kindness to myself. So I will definitely carry the lessons it taught me with me. I cannot wait to see what 2025 brings us. But until then, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and don't support genocide. Bye!